Hi everybody, thanks for joining me again. So it has recently come to my attention, Bill C-372 was just introduced in the House of Commons. So it's the first session and 44th Parliament, and an act respecting fossil fuel advertising. The first reading was February 5th, 2024. So just recently, and it's something that we all want to pay attention to, especially because fossil fuels is kind of Alberta's main way of making its living. So what I want to do is, just for those of you that don't have time to read the bill, I just want to read the preamble of the bill off, and then it's something simple for everybody to go and look up and see the details of it all and everything. So the preamble starts with saying, whereas climate change represents an unprecedented and existential threat to people in Canada and around the world. So they're using the climate change narrative to put across this new bill that's going to restrict advertising for fossil fuels. And as you get into it, it's quite bizarre, and it's very, very restrictive. Whereas extreme weather events such as the 2021 heat dome in British Columbia are already proving deadly in Canada, and according to Health Canada, they are expected to increase in frequency and magnitude due to climate change. Whereas in 2023, Canada experienced the worst wildfire season ever recorded, as the country exceeded the largest area ever burned in a year, totaling more than 7.9 million hectares. Whereas the Government of Canada has made international climate commitments to drastically reduce fossil fuel consumption and to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, which requires the timely phase out of fossil fuels. Whereas the protection of the environment is a valid use of the federal criminal law power. Whereas air pollution caused by fossil fuels leads to millions of premature deaths globally, including tens of thousands of premature deaths in Canada alone, and is a major cause of cancer, respiratory illness, adverse pregnancy outcomes, children's diseases, and cardiovascular symptoms. Whereas fossil fuel production and consumption has resulted in a national public health crisis of substantial and pressing concern, in a way that is similar to the public health crisis caused by tobacco consumption. Whereas in 1989, Parliament restricted tobacco advertising and sponsorship to reduce tobacco use to respond to that public health crisis. And so what they want to do is use the same template to restrict oil field advertisement, just in the same way that they did to the tobacco companies, using health and safety as their little way to get it across. Whereas the context of a climate emergency, fossil fuel advertising sends a confusing and contradictory message about the need to urgently end Canada's reliance on fossil fuels. And whereas Parliament is of the opinion that fossil fuel advertising currently deploys techniques which knowingly mislead the public and fail to disclose the health and environmental harms associated with their use, impeding informed consumer decision-making, undermining public support for effective climate action, and delaying the transition to safer, cleaner energy sources. Now thereof, His Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and House of Commons of Canada, enacts as follows. And then it goes into the short title, and it says this act may be cited as the Fossil Fuel Advertising Act. So that's what you would go in and that's what you would Google to find this. And then it goes into the interpretation, and it comes up with a bunch of definitions. So know your definitions when you go in and you read the document, because that's going to be important in understanding it. So they go into what brand element means, entity, fossil fuel, indigenous peoples is one that they have in there, and that's going to be important to note, because under the treaty, they're going to have different things that affect them. So then it goes into minister, prescribed, producer, promotion, retailer, sell, and then it goes into the purpose of the act. So the purpose of this act is to provide a legislative response to a national public health and environmental problem of substantial and pressing concern, and in particular, to protect the health of Canadians in light of conclusive evidence implicating the burning of fossil fuels and numerous adverse health effects, including fatalities. Now, just take a trip back 2 to 3 years ago, and what were they using the last time for an emergency? It was our health and safety. And it kind of seems like they're using the same narrative again, but they're just using climate this time to change everything about our way of life. Making decisions for us and not consulting us on it. Otherwise, we would have been made aware of this bill. And people like me wouldn't have to be informing you with videos and reading it off for you. So then C, it says, to prevent the public from being deceived or misled with respect to the environmental and health hazards of using fossil fuels, and to enhance public awareness of those hazards. So if that's actually the case, I would like them to show the studies along with this, that it is primarily the fossil fuels being burned, because the last time I looked, coal mining actually isn't that great for the environment either, and we know they're increasing production to sell over to our friendly neighborhood, China. Application. It goes into application, then it goes into promotion. And the one thing that kind of caught my eye when I was going over the bill is the media, the exemption, who's exempt from this kind of stuff. Foreign media, report to minister, and supplementary information. Then it goes into the regulations. So read that, understand it. Miscellaneous provision, and then when it goes into offenses and punishments, that's the weird part, because 15.1, every producer who contravenes section 6 is guilty of an offense and liable. So then there's convictions for advertising in the ways that they don't want any form of advertising. So these convictions on indictment, they can go over $100,000 to imprisonment for a term, not exceeding 2 years, or to both, or on summary, $500,000, or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year, or to both. False promotion. There's a whole bunch of stuff talking about imprisonment if you start supporting oil and gas. General offense, continuing offense, offense by director or officer or corporation, limitation periods, and then it goes on to agreements and review of the act. So this is something I think that everybody should take a good look into. Please, please, please read it. Those of you who aren't readers, please start. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble. But thanks for your time. Share the video, share the information. I appreciate it. And talk to you later, fellow Albertans. Stay safe.